Hello, everybody. It's Julia Lundstrom, your neuroscience and brain health educator. And today I want to talk about 3 ways to remember names. Now, first, happy Friday. We're going into a long weekend. So this may be the perfect time to talk about this. You may be going to parties or barbecues, meeting people you've never met before. So what I want to start with is saying that remembering someone's name is not natural. So that's the very first thing. It's the most common complaint I get from customers and frankly anyone I meet that I talk about being a memory specialist with. The first thing they always say is, I can never remember anybody's names. Nobody can. Almost nobody can. It is a learned skill. You are not supposed to remember someone's name when you first meet them. Evolutionary-wise, it doesn't make any sense. Here's why. So throughout time, let's say this is our whole evolution, right? Let's see if I can fit that in there. Our whole evolution is this, of the time that humankind has been on Earth. Only this amount of time has other humans not been a threat to survival. This amount of time, humans have been a threat to our survival. When we meet somebody, they came into our camp or they came into our cave, usually they were looking to hurt us. Usually they were looking to kill us or take our food or take our babies or whatever they were going to do. They were not friends. So anytime we met somebody throughout history, when we met somebody the first time, we aren't trying to remember their name. We're trying to think, are they going to kill us? Are they friend or are they foe? And so that's why we can't remember names, because frankly, we aren't meant to. I mean, we talk about first impressions. First impressions come from that very small monkey brain, from our amygdala, that's saying, should I stay and fight or should I flee? And so, yeah, your first impression is strong and it's really hard to override that. So when you go up to somebody and you're like, hey, my name is Julia, and hey, my name is Bob, and that's the very first connection you have with somebody, you're not going to remember their name. You're sussing them out. You're determining, are you a friend or a foe? And that's the way we're wired. That's the way that for millions of years through our evolution, we have been wired to greet somebody, to see somebody. Because normally, like I said, they were out to kill us. So what do we do to override that? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. Give you 3 ways to override that primary, that primeval, a little amygdala in your brain that's full of fear, to override that and remember somebody's name. Because it's really important, and I just want to say again, it doesn't mean that you have a bad memory. I think the biggest thing, first of all, no one remembers names unless you have the learned skill. If you don't remember somebody's name that you've known for many years, you've had many associations with, and you can't remember their name, that may be a problem and you want to talk to your doctor about. But the fact that you can't remember somebody's name when you first meet them, widespread, almost no one can. So let's learn skills today that are going to help you learn how to remember names. Now, the first thing and the hardest is preparedness. And it's hard because no one remembers to get prepared. You're going to walk into a party or an office meeting or whatever situation you have to prepare yourself outside to override your amygdala, which is, again, the fear center in your brain, that center that's getting that first impression, so that you actually listen to somebody's name when they tell it to you. Unfortunately, as a society, what do? The first thing we do is, hey, my name's Julia. Instead of, hey, how are you? How's your day going? And then maybe 30 seconds in, say, hey, my name's Julia. That'd be so much easier to remember somebody's name because at that point, we know they're a friend. They're not going to kill us. They're not a threat to our survival. So we stay and we talk to them and we listen to them at that point. We're not listening to them that first 10 seconds we meet them. So if you can, avoid saying your name the first 30 seconds. But if you can't, I'll give you a few tips and tricks on how to override that. But if you're prepared going into it, you can hear that person's name. But up until that, you literally cannot hear that person's name when you're in that fight or flight mode, when you're in that first impression mode. Your brain doesn't register it at all. So prepare yourself. Now again, that's the hardest because you just forget to prepare yourself. And The amygdala is so powerful that even if you do prepare yourself, if you're not practiced, you're going to walk into that party and immediately it's going to take over anyway, right? So really, you just want to probably follow the next two tips and tricks. They're much, much easier. So the next way, let's say that you walk into a party and you go up to somebody and like, hi, my name's Julia. And they're like, hey, hi, Emma. Hi, Anna. You walk into a party and you're like, hey, my name's Julia. And they're like, hey, my name's Bob. Well, what you want to do, again, you may not remember that at all, is 30 seconds into the conversation, ask for their name again. And then give them your name again. You're going to be doing them a huge favor because they won't remember your name either. I promise you, if you don't remember their name, they're not remembering your name. So what you want to do is you want to say, hey, I'm sorry. You can say I'm really bad with names or make it a conversation starter. We're not supposed to remember names. So can you give me your name again? And they'll say, yeah, my name is Bob. Great. Do them the favor again and say, my name is Julia. So then you can take it in and register it. Now, repetition is key. So what you want to do is over the next few minutes, repeat their name often. So yeah, Bob, so I heard you do this. Or Bob, what do you do for a living? Or mention as many times as they can. They start talking about sailing. Bob, my husband loves to sail. Maybe Bob, you and my husband Andreas can get together. So you're just going to repeat it. Repetition is key. So that's the second way to remember somebody's name. Again, ask for their name after 30 seconds or a minute. Just say, hey, can I get your name again? It's not rude. Believe me, they will be so relieved when you give them your name. So the third way actually goes into kind of the association. Now, we've all met somebody and they say, hey, my name is Andrew. It's like, hey, I immediately got it. My son's name is Andrew. I am not going to forget their name because I associate them now with an easy name because it's my son's name, right? We all have that. We know that that's super easy to do. So the third way to remember somebody's name is by association. Now, this isn't always that easy. If it's not somebody in your immediate circle, your immediate family, it may be a little bit harder. Let's say someone says that their name is Michael. Well, I know a million Michaels, so I can't just associate this Michael, this new Michael, with another Michael, right? That's a little bit harder. Or Bob, it's such a common name. How am I going to remember that this guy's name is Bob? Well, this is what you want to do, and it's fun. And once you get practiced at it and you use it as a game, it becomes really, really fun. So what you're going to want to do is picture something funny, crazy, sexy even. You can picture Bob bobbing his head up and down to some music, maybe naked, right? You are not going to forget that image ever, I promise you. Our brains work on pictures. They work on images. That's why they say that the Chinese and Japanese can remember numbers better because their numbers are actually pictures. So if they wanted to remember 74, let's say their 7 is a boat and their 4 is a bed. I'm just pulling this out. I don't know what it is. Their 74 would be a boat on top of a bed. Well, that's going to be something you remember, right? So if you're thinking about 1974, you're going to remember a boat on a bed and then whatever you're trying to remember on top of it, and it's going to be much easier. So our brains remember in images. Let's create these crazy, funny images, and that's going to really seal it in. So Bob, I'm picturing you naked, bobbing your head up and down. Maybe somewhere in the conversation, you tell me that you're a big sailor. I don't know why I keep going back to sailing, but you tell me you're a big sailor. Well, then now I'm going to picture Bob naked on a sailboat, bobbing his head up and down. And I promise you, I can see Bob 6 months from now, and I'm going to picture that same thing. I'm going to remember his name is Bob, and I'm going to remember that he's into sailing, and he's going to be blown away by the fact that I can remember all this. There are easier associations like mat. You can picture a big, shaggy green mat on somebody's head. It gets a little tricky though. Sometimes maybe it's a name you've never heard before. I was in Sweden the last 4.5 years, and oh my gosh, I heard so many crazy names that I have no association with. I mean, there's nothing that triggers these names for me. So what do? Let's, for instance, Tesson. Never heard that name before, have no association. I don't know anyone named Tesson. It doesn't trigger any English words for me. So I had to repeat it more. So you may have to repeat a name, like Bob, maybe 3 to 6 times in the conversation to remember it. Maybe with Tesson, I have to repeat the name 7 to 21 times to remember it. Or I can maybe maybe it's not a direct association, maybe it's 2 down the line. So I can say Tesson, all right, it's kind of like tassels. So I can picture tassels off of her head. So then I can think, all right, tassels, picture tassels, Tesson, and you'll get there. It gets a little tricky. So sometimes you got to get really, really creative. What was another one recently Matthias. So Matthias in Swedish, I think half the population is named Matthias. My brother-in-law is named Matthias. And it's just not a name I had ever heard before. So what I had to do then is think about the English equivalent, which is Matthew. And then I could think about the mat on his head. And it's good because then I can picture this big green shaggy mat on his head. And then I have to do a double association. So I go from green shaggy mat, his name is Matt, Matthew, Matthias, the Swedish version. So sometimes it can get really tricky and you may have to break it into 2 or 3 parts. But that's a really, really powerful way to remember people's names. And it takes practice. This is a skill. This isn't something you're born with. It is a true skill to remember somebody's name. So, and I was just going to say one last little hint is do them a favor so that they can remember your name. So if we take my son's name, for instance, Andrew. When he grows, he's only 2, but when he grows up, a good thing to do would be, let's say he meets somebody, he's like, hey, my name is Andrew, or we call him Drew. So he goes, hey, my name is Drew, like if you drew a picture. Well, now he gave the person the association. They didn't have to think about it. It was super easy, and believe me, they're very grateful. And they're now picturing Drew drawing a picture, and they're going to remember that his name is Drew. In my instance, I can say, hey, my name is Julia, like Julia Roberts. Now, I may look nothing like Julia Roberts, although I've been told I have a big mouth, so maybe there's that. But it doesn't matter, because now they're thinking Julia Roberts, and they're thinking of you. They created an association, a neural connection in their brains to where now every time they see you, they're going to see Julia Roberts, and they're going to know your name. So you could do that favor for them. And yeah, hi Anna, thank you. I miss you too. Yes, so those are the 3 ways to remember your name. To remember other people's names, you know your name, sorry. To remember other people's names. These are 3 great ways. So let's reiterate. 1 is preparedness, hardest way. 2nd is repetitiveness. Ask for their name 30 seconds or a minute into the conversation. Just say, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Great, here's my name again. 3rd way is the visualization. Do some association with their name. So now that you know that it's totally natural that you don't know how to remember names, go out, practice these. Great weekend to do it. Martin Luther King weekend. I'm sure you're going to be doing something where you're going to meet somebody new. And if you're not, go out and do something where you're going to meet somebody new. That's really good for your brain health too. So have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.